Hey guys, Spud here, as always, and today we got a little bit of a different video. I'm just bringing you guys on my journey towards becoming proficient and current once again in the DCS AH-64D Apache. Now, I haven't flown this helicopter for a long time now. I flew it a lot when it first came out, but then we had a rather disastrous Spuds Buds mission trying to incorporate the Apache into it, and so I got away from flying the Apache for quite a while there. But now I'm back and trying to incorporate the Apache into a Spuds Buds mission once again, and I'm hoping it'll go a lot more smoothly this time now that the Apache is better integrated into DCS as a whole. There's less bugs, it's been updated more, all of that. Now, I have found personally that the Apache is a lot easier to fly now, and it has a lot more power. I get into a lot less kind of situations where I just seemingly fall out of the sky for no reason while trying to hover, things of that nature. And so I find it to be a lot more enjoyable of an experience. Now, today's not going to be a tutorial or anything like that. It's going to be more of a let's play. You guys can look over my shoulder, see how I'm doing. Please feel free to comment down below about how you think I'm doing in the Apache and any tips or tricks you guys might have, because once again, I am not an expert in helicopters whatsoever. They are like trying to fly an alien spacecraft to me. So let me know what any suggestions you have in the comments down below. So let's go ahead and hop in the cockpit and get started, guys. All right, here we are back in the office of the AH-64D. And like I said earlier, guys, this video is just going to be very relaxed. I'm just going to be flying the aircraft today, just kind of having some fun, getting myself reused to flying the Apache once again. And I'm sure I'm going to be making lots of mistakes, and I'm kind of looking forward to actually seeing your comments on things from those of you guys who never stopped flying the Apache to give me some better tips and tricks on how to actually fly this monstrous attack helicopter, that's for sure. So first things first, we'll go ahead and we will turn on our APU. There we go. APU start is on, APU power is on, tail wheel is locked.
Hydraulic failure.
Well, that's nice. Hydraulic failure right off the bat. Thanks, Betty. Okay. So we got that guy going. Let's go ahead and crank our number 2 engine. Boom, there she goes. There's the light off. I'm going to take away my monocle for now. During the startup procedure, I always find it's just easiest to look around at the cockpit quickly and easily without having to worry about using the monocle. We'll make sure we get our primary internal lights turned up on the brightness so that way we can get that monocle nice and aligned very easily. Beautiful. That looks like a good start. Why don't we go ahead and crank our number 1 engine. There's our light off. Nice, nice, nice. Go through the rest of our start procedure. Some things have changed since I stopped flying the Apache for a while, so what's interesting now is all of our comm volumes are turned on by default. We just need to kind of turn up the volume on some certain things here. That's pretty easy. Cool. It's all looking good, and what we'll do now is I'll push the thrust levers up into their fly position. And that should help get the Doppler aligned for our navigational systems. I don't know about you guys, but I've always found that the Doppler has a hard time aligning if I don't have those thrust levers all the way forward. So I don't know if that's a thing or not. Please let me know in the comments section down below. And we'll go ahead and turn our APU off. I think I accidentally just turned it back on. Yep, sure did. Accidentally clicked it twice. Alright, and APU's coming off. There we go. Alright, so we'll let that go ahead and count on down. We'll go to our weapon page, bring our monocle back. Beautiful. And we will go ahead and bore sight the IHADs. Cool, got that. Now it's ready to go. Looking around here, what else do we need to do in our seat? Back to our weapon page, manual range. Set that to 1,000. I always find if I'm pulling security in the back seat with the gun slaved to my monocle, if I go to a manual range setting of 1,000 yards, I can kind of do more or less better Kentucky windage when it comes to actually firing the gun at close range targets, and that helps me a lot. We'll go over to, we'll go ground already on and armed just to get our chaffs and flares set up and ready to go. So we'll go to our ASC. Chaff is on. We'll go manual mode on the chaff, so that way we don't have it spitting out chaff everywhere we go when a radar decides to take a look at us. And I always like to have my video set up on my left hand screen here. Vid, TADS, and then I usually put my ASC up here on the left. And that sun is real bright right there. It is just blooming out the TADS like crazy. And then we'll go to my TSD over here. Let's check out the alignment. Oh, it's getting better. Cool. That's what we like to see. And then for what else? Alright. So one thing that I always like to do, and I'm not sure how many other people do this, I always like to change my units over to nautical miles because I'm an American and I am absolutely hobbled by being affixed to the imperial system, and kilometers mean nothing to me. So we'll go back to here. We'll go back to our TSD, and we can see that kind of changes the scaling to some weird kind of scaling metrics here, and that's because, of course, it's meant to be in metric kilometers as opposed to nautical miles. But especially when you're working with fixed wing aircraft in conjunction with you, and you're trying to reference, you know, things in the battle space around you, and you're trying to work with, say, some Hornet pilots or some F-16 pilots, and you're working on kilometers and they're working on nautical miles, it can get a little bit confusing. So another good reason to swap that over, as well as the fact that I am disabled. Chart, there we go, that's a good chart. Scale, we'll go route, we'll do a direct to waypoint 1, beautiful. Keep in mind, guys, that you can in fact type that in if you'd like, but I always like to just use the options down here. Alright, and then we zoom her out a little bit here. Yep, we can see our first target's here, second target's here, then our airport for some pattern work is going to be over here. Got a couple airports around here that'll be helpful to have around. Our position confidence is getting better and better. That's perfect. Go ahead and turn that video off since it's so bloomed out anyway. Yeah, we'll select our gun. go back to safe, so that way we don't accidentally shoot the gun at any parked helicopters or any ground personnel around us. That would be very bad. And we'll go ahead and set our parking brake off by pushing forward on the toe brakes. And we'll keep the tail wheel locked for now. And we'll get a little bit of taxi practice in. We've got the wind coming from the east today, about 090 degrees at roughly around 7.5 knots or so. And so we will make sure that we taxi out, point our nose into that wind, and we'll be ready to rock and roll. So you can see our nose is already basically at that 090 degrees, and it looks like the clouds are moving in with a little bit of rain here. That'll be kind of cool. So why don't we go ahead and taxi ourselves on out. The APU is off and secure, kind of do a little sweep around the cockpit. I'm sure I'm forgetting something that you guys will remind me in the comments section down below, but that's part of the reason why we are doing this video today. And a little bit up on the collective, we'll push the cyclic forward a bit. And ideally we should start rolling. There we go. The wheel's unlocked now. Oh, she's sensitive. I have not taxied the Apache in a while, that's for sure. Now, one thing I do remember pretty well is we want to make sure we are not using our toe brakes, very similar to kind of like a fixed wing type of aircraft. We want to make sure that we are we are using the cyclic to pull back for braking as opposed to using those toe brakes. I don't think that we'd actually like nose over super hard like a fixed wing tailwheel aircraft, but it's not something that we want to find out here. And a lot of this kind of oscillation that you're seeing is something that I've found is most likely due to us in DCS as well as other simulators. We just simply don't have that force feedback capability, as well as we're not feeling the helicopter, if that makes any sense. So we tend to, in DCS and other simulators, get into POIs very, very easily because we're not getting any of that feedback from the aircraft. And it's especially true in helicopters, I've found in DCS. We just have to be very, very gentle, very careful with the controls and how we're manipulating those controls. And with helicopters, especially the Apache here, it's not so much with the big, heavy Russian helicopters, but it still applies, is that we just have to be slow and gentle and smooth. And if we start to get into one of those POIs, we just got to think about it, and we got to really just relax how we're controlling the airplane, or the helicopter I should say, and then really just evaluate what we need to do different. Okay. So we're here on a little runway at our little FARP, and we can see we've got a hip with a Royal Daimar Air Force paint scheme on it, which is pretty awesome. Another big thanks to Bumble. And we've got ourselves a couple Hueys over here that also have that Royal Daimar Air Force paint scheme. Very, very cool stuff. So let's go ahead and we'll take off and we'll fly out, and we'll investigate some of that terrorist activity across the mountains here just north of Damascus. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and we'll start to pull up on our collective. That was very strange. I'm not sure what happened there. It was like my controls got frozen for a second. I could literally not lift the nose up there for a second. That was very strange. I have not had that happen for a while. So we'll start to bring her around. And we'll start to head off towards our waypoint. Which is way over there. Alright. And so we'll do a little circle around this mosque area. There really is a ton of awesome stuff on the Syria map here that I think goes very, very unexplored. That is always very, very cool. Like these little FARPs with the little army base next to this little town area in the suburbs of Damascus. All just very, very cool stuff that really does go very unexplored most of the time. There we go. Now we got ourselves a little bit better control of this beast. I kind of wish that some of these points of interest, like these FARPs, or different army bases, bridges, you know, targets of interest that could be very, very cool for mission makers to set as targets or set as part of the scenery for a mission, or, you know, build missions around these things that are built into the map a lot more easily labeled on the map in the mission in the mission editor or on the F10 map, because it could be really cool. Like there's for instance, just along the Lebanese-Israeli border on this map, there is a old castle that I'm sure many of you guys have not seen on this map before. That was an old fort that was created by the Crusaders during the Crusades way back when, and was actually the site of a large battle between Israeli and Syrian forces during the 1982 Lebanon War, which is just super cool as well, that one fort has been so important to, you know, military stuff for so long. So we'll get our video turned back on. What I really like about the Apache now that it's gotten a lot of love since it was first brought out, is it's very stable and very easy to fly now. My almost dipping my rotor blades into the ground notwithstanding back there, of course, it is, you can fly hands off. Like I have my hands off right now. I'm just looking at things, you know, clicking on stuff with my mouse, all that good stuff. And it is just a heck of a lot easier now. It's great. We're going to set our acquisition source to our TADs, of course, and that'll help us be able to either engage stuff with a gun from the backseat, fire our rockets from the backseat, things like that. I have a hard time setting things up perfectly. Probably the preciseness of my flying isn't great, but setting things up perfectly for George in the front seat to be able to actually engage targets with rockets. And so I tend to fire my rockets from the back seat, which is probably the incorrect thing to do. We'll waz our guns. Cool, we're getting coincidence. Beautiful, that means the gun is following our head. That's what we want. I don't believe that barometric altitude, or sorry, radar altitude or barometric altitude hold work all that well. Some people say they aren't actually implemented yet. Some people say they are. Yeah, we can see it's, maybe it seems like it's trying to. The parameters just seem a little small. Yeah, when I just move the collective just a hair, it has some issues. So I don't think that works too well, but the attitude hold works really well, and that really helps for hover, which is probably what I should have done there back for takeoff, is just throw it into attitude hold mode and just help me, you know, pop off the ground and hover a little bit there. I think also I should have probably just hard reset my trim before even attempting to take off, so that's kind of my bad. I always find the trim does get kind of messed up when I go through and try to taxi the helicopter on wheels before takeoff. So we see our waypoint 1 is 12 nautical miles out there, of course denoted by our little home plate type symbol with a dot in it. And for crossing these mountains here, we've got a pass over here at our 11 o'clock, and it looks like it moves from our 11 to about our 11:30. And then we've got, looks like a pass up here that we can probably hop through as well on our 12 o'clock. And again, I'm pretty much doing this completely hands-off. This is really, really nice. Can't really do this in a Hind, that's for sure. In the Hind, she is a beast. You've got to be controlling her all the time. You can maybe get away with it in the Mi-8. It's got some better autopilot controls for sure. And it seems we've gotten into some worse rain here. I don't think that'll be a problem. Start to angle ourselves for this little pass that we're going to fly up. So we'll try to get to a point here where we get our autopilot back on. Boop. There we go. Nice. So, because obviously in the back seat here we need to be able to see what our gunner is doing up front with the TADs and whatnot, engaging targets with rockets or the Hellfires. And so I try to have my ASC page up because therefore I can be able to see, you know, radar threats around me, whether, you know, a Zeus pops up or an SA-8 pops up, something not so great like that. But also, it's one of the least populated pages because we don't actually have a TADS repeater, which is kind of annoying. I would think that that would be something that would be, you know, good to have. Is to have a TADS repeater, but because there isn't one of those, the ASC page works really well because it's very, very decluttered. It's just a circle, and you just have that symbology from those radar cues up there. And so I just really think there should be an extra layer on the maps in DCS, especially for the Syria map, because there's so many cool things that could be targets, like, say, these highway overpasses that are so hard to find in the mission editor. So you could hide, say, like a Scud underneath that, like the Iraqis did, you know, during the 1991 Gulf War. And so, you know, you could have Strike Eagles looking for Scuds underneath overpasses, and, you know, trying to approach targets in the correct way to get their laser-guided bombs to fly into the overpass and hit the Scud underneath it, or go through the overpass with a penetrator, you know, things of that nature that could be pretty darn cool. And so, of course, we've got the Scourge of all helicopters, high-tension power lines here. We'll make sure we don't hit those guys. And then, you know, things like oil pipelines. That'd be pretty cool to be able to see those on the map very easily. And there we go. If you're going to do some maneuvering, definitely turn off the autopilot modes. I tend to forget that, and then my SAS gets saturated and things don't go so great from there. So we'll just be following this highway on up. I don't know if I'm just potentially better at doing this now with the Apache or what, but it feels like the Apache got a power upgrade with some of these patches, because I feel like I can have less of a percentage on the collective and still be able to do things like hover even with a full load of weapons and gas. Like we started, you know, with 100% gas, 8 Hellfires, and 2 rocket pods, and we could still hover no problem. That's no problem at all. Whereas, you know, a helicopter like the Mi-24, which struggles to hover even when it's totally empty, will never actually hover for you with a full load of weapons and gas. Nice, we're just following this highway on up, going on a little Syrian road trip. I feel like I keep hearing like little flak bursts, but I know I didn't put any flak in this mission, so I'm just paranoid. Just DCS PTSD. Very interesting flying helicopters, you know, for somebody who's just a fixed-wing person like myself. You know, it's just the interaction between... It's like you're flying an aircraft in the regional reverse command the entire time, as opposed to only when you're at slow speeds coming in for a landing on a fixed-wing aircraft. So that's very interesting to me, in my opinion. So we're coming up here across this ridge here. We should be able to get some eyes onto our targets down there. 3.3 nautical miles only. Oh boy. I do know that I am a rather enticing target for tankers with a main gun. If I get into too slow of a hover for too long, so we want to make sure we're avoiding that as much as possible, but we're going to slow her on down, so that way we can let our CPG do what he does best. Again, especially when it comes to slowing down, this is something that I have to remind myself of all the time flying the Apache, is slow down slowly. Don't try to just yank the cyclic around and the collective around trying to go from 90 knots to a perfect hover in, you know, 5 seconds, because that's just not going to happen, and things will only go bad as a result of that. So let's see, let's survey the area here. How much cover do we have? ESD. Map. Scale. Alright, so we can see, we know that the targets are in the industrial section to the northeastern portion of this little city, so let's go ahead and do one of these. And try to figure out how to get at these guys. Get our gunner doing his thing. Let's go for low Al.
Lasers off. Slaving.
Let's so there's an M113 down there. So, okay, so he wants to go after the targets that are over here first, because I guess they are more visible. We've got targets over here that are hidden more in the city. These guys are 1.7 nautical miles out.
And slave. Empty slave. Firing. Engaging.
At least we're still moving a little bit here, so we're not making ourselves too big of a target. Or too easy of a target for any of those T-55s that are down there.
Lasers off. Good effects, good effects.
Alright.
Roger, ceasefire. Copy, ceasefire.
Well, let's go ahead behind these mountains here, give ourselves a little bit more cover. It might get a better angle and a better vantage point on the vehicles in the larger town area as well. Biggest thing in my opinion is just being patient with helicopters. If you're not patient, you're going to run into trouble very, very quickly, and it's not going to go well. Okay, cool. We got a really nice vantage point up here, and that looks like a better hill to hang out behind over there, and that might give us a better angle on these guys over here. There's definitely a fire. We definitely hit something out there. That's nice. And so, again, with that patience thing, what I've found is like, okay, we see a cool hill, let's go hide behind that hill, and people want to like sprint for it, you know? And that just will get you in trouble every day of the week if you try to do things too quickly. I'm probably even going a little too fast here. My indicated airspeed is 48 knots, which isn't great. Especially if I want to just like hang out and chill behind something. Let's see if I can get her into a bit of a hover. We'll get her into a hold mode. Nice.
Slaving. Deslaving. Firing. Blazing. Lasers off. Laser on. Laser. Roger, ceasefire.
Shit, why did he do that? Alright, I gotta figure out how to make Jester stop engaging on his own. I forgot how to do that, so let's go to adjust control. Alright, so we got George figured out here, which is good. Now we just got to figure out how many Hellfires we got left, because George kind of wasted a couple there. It's like we got 4 left. That's no problem. We can work with that. Alright, so let's shift our position here. Hello. Yeah, again, sometimes she can be touchy. That's for sure. We just got to be nice and slow, nice and gentle. And kind of the pressure of doing a video on the AH-64 here is kind of definitely helping prepare me for flying it in a mission where there's going to be a lot of pressure going on and a lot of, we got to figure out, you know, where targets are, give those targets to jets, let those jets engage those targets. And I'm just doing, because of that extra pressure, I would say I'm over controlling the helicopter and not being as patient as I should be. So that's something good to learn about myself before flying it in a mission. Absolutely. It also doesn't help, so we're heading more or less due east where the wind is coming from. We're trying to hover in a position where we got a direct crosswind coming at us, which definitely doesn't help. So let's see if we can kind of raise up a little bit here, get a better vantage point on some of those targets down there. And we figured out the command to get George to stop firing on his own, so that's going to be exceedingly helpful. A little bit far above this ridge, but I'm okay with that. We needed a better vantage point to be able to engage some of these targets down here.
Target is stored. Firing.
That should be a better hit.
Blazing.
Oh, that weapon is not going to track. Alright. We've got another set of vehicles down here as well, which I want to get out of the way of. Before they start engaging me, so that's good that I saw those guys here. We'll get back behind this ridge. Get the aircraft retrimmed back out. Before we set up for another attack run, probably let's go for lock on before launch, and that's going to be a better option for us here.
Lasers off.
Let's go after the T-55.
Firing.
There we go. Now we got a track.
Lasers off.
Nice shot. Again, I think we should not get any closer to these guys. There's a couple trucks with Dishkas down there. SAS is saturated. That's no big deal. Let's fly her manually till we get back around this ridge here. So it looks like they're down there in that little square area of the industrial sector of that little city down there. That's no problem. And keep working this. Because they're kind of in the open, we have more options to engage those guys. So let's see what we can do here. Might come down to the end of this ridge here, then hop into the front seat and try things out for myself there. So we'll start to slow her on down because we want George to be more or less in a hover for us. And George will more or less keep what we're already doing in the helicopter steady for us once we change seats. Retrim her out. A bit more rudders there. Beautiful. Cancel out that side slip. Retrim her out again. And front seat here. We'll get rid of the monocle. Don't need that. Turn the TADs on. I don't know why Jester always does that. There we go, adjust the gain and brightness. Now let's see here. Where are we looking? Alright, we got, looks like a couple areas of infantry over here. Let's go to our weapon page. Oh, we got a weapon page up here. Let's go to our TSD over here. Beautiful. Alright, we got 2 Hellfires left. That looks like a worthwhile target there. A Dishka with some guys standing around it. Keep tracking it, and kaboom. Wow. Good splash damage. Took out a whole bunch of those guys down there. And looks like they drove out of range for us to or out of line of sight for us. Let's see, are there any other targets potentially? We're out here. A bunch of dead guys and a couple trucks over here. Cool, let's go ahead and engage this guy over there. And that one's going to have to do a bit of a curveball. No problem, it'll do it. And so sometimes George does a really good job, other times he doesn't do such a great job. He's much better when targets are out in the open and we're not maneuvering nearly as much. So with that, let's see if we can get a little bit closer and maybe get a little action in with our gun. And it's always a ride when you hop into the other seat. Hello.
Launching rockets.
Cool, so he is wazzing rockets. Alright, let's see here. What do we got for targets?
And sleep. Laser on. Roger, engaging.
Okay. Oh, Hello. That's some 50 cal rounds. We don't want to be in the way of that, that's for sure. So we are going to go ahead and get out of there. And that's why you definitely don't want to waste those Hellfire missiles like we did today. And again, Jester just doesn't like to use the rockets very much, so let's see if we can get a more effective solution with our rockets from the back seat. We just waz the rockets, and we are ready to rock and roll.
Roger, engaging.
Oh, there we go, he actually engaged.
Lasers off. Target destroyed.
Nice. Good job. Again, one of the first time I've ever seen him actually engage with rockets really well. And I think we got that M113 down there, so that's beautiful. Oh, we're still getting hit by something, so that's not good. Awesome. Alright, so we've taken some damage. We're not getting any master cautions or master warnings. But we're definitely playing with fire at this point. Not sure how many rocket rounds we have left. And we got quite a few. So I guess we can play with fire a little bit more and maybe do another rocket run on those guys. Probably the more effective way to do this would be to come from a lower angle, but then it's harder for George. I know I keep using the name George and Jester interchangeably. It's harder for him to engage effectively, but it should keep us out of harm's way for longer. I believe that vehicle that's still down there is just a T-55, so that's not great.
Slaving. Deslaving. And slave. Deslaving.
Ah, it's a Dishka. Alright, where are you looking? Over here.
Lasers off. Deslaving. Blazing.
I'm just going to do my own rocket run then. Right down
Lasers
here.
off. Deslaving.
Well, that wasn't great. That was just some Kentucky windage with rockets. I believe that is a tank down there, so we got to be careful. Nope, it's a Dishka. He doesn't appear to be alive. Alright, well, let's go ahead, because there's a lot of heavy weapons down there still. Didn't really get as many of those trucks and tanks taken out with our Hellfires as I wanted to, so we'll just skip the gun for now, and we will head on back to waypoint 3, and we'll get some pattern work in at the airfield. So you can see here, even though we're quite a bit lighter now, we've used a lot of gas. The helicopter just seems to have a lot more power available to it. and it just makes it a lot easier to do things like hop over hills and get behind things, get into hovers, things of that nature. Turn the video off. Route direct to waypoint 3. There we go, there's waypoint 3 over there, 7 miles away, no problem, we can get there. And it's definitely just flies so much different. I haven't over-torqued or over-sped the engine at all. Whereas that's usually something that happens quite often when I first started flying the Apache. And again, I think it's probably a combination of flight model tweaking, but also a combination of myself just getting better with the idea of flying a helicopter. And again, just going back to that whole point of you just have to be so gentle and so patient. A few times there while I was in combat, I was getting impatient. Kind of have to remember that, you know, you're like a butterfly made out of glass going against tanks, you know, with rockets and a gun. You know, so if you're out at Hellfires, it's best to kind of call it a day and let other Apaches or Hinds or something that still have some anti-tank guided missiles to take them out, or call in fixed wing assets and hand those targets off to Hornets or Vipers or Tomcats or whoever's out there to help you out, because of course that's what they're there for. Now I am kind of bummed that we didn't get to use the gun very much or at all, but it happens. Alright. Arm. Everything is safed up for some pattern work. Let's see how much damage we took. I'm not seeing too much. I know that we definitely probably took a few 50 cal rounds from an M2 Browning on top of one of those M113s, or at least a couple of 50 cals from those Dishkas on the trucks. But we look pretty okay on the outside. Hey, I just safed you. Why did you go back to arm? Alright. So it looks like the field's runway more or less is east and west. So that will be perfect for today. So that way we can get a nice landing in, pointed right into the wind. Start to slow this bucket of bolts down. It just takes longer to slow the helicopter down than it feels like it should. Because in jets, we're so used to everything going fast, happening fast, the jet slows down fast, it speeds up fast. We can climb fast, we can descend fast. With the helicopters, we just have to be patient and just be gentle with things and let things just slowly settle out over time. It's like the rain is starting to pick up a little bit, it's getting a little harder. But we're not worried about it, it's just a little bit of rain. Having to feel the helicopter kind of windmilling into the wind a little bit. Again, it's coming from roughly about 090 or so. So we'll keep slowing her on down. Don't want to get any more than about 500 foot per minute of descent rate, as you don't want to do a settle of power. But again, I don't think that the helicopter is nearly as susceptible to getting into those low power states where you have a lot of issues with the engines overspeeding and getting low blade RPM and all that stuff. The helicopter just feels a lot easier to fly now. So that's awesome. Alright. Again, trying to avoid those kind of oscillations. Whenever we see the helicopter just going, you know, back and forth, whether that's an up and down oscillation in the pitch or the yaw axis back and forth, I would just center your controls. Be nice and gentle. Make sure you have the helicopter trimmed out. And ideally, we want to have that happen not so close to the ground. Just add a little bit more trim there. And let's try and put the helicopter down between the two white lines on the runway here. I have no idea what kind of symbology or runway markings the Syrians use, but they look like a cool little target for us to set the helicopter down in there. Again, just being slow, being patient. No need to hurry up. Keep in mind that I'm in the front of a big old long dragonfly, so want to put my cockpit further towards not the middle between our two lines, but towards our edge of our lines here where we're trying to touch down. There we go. Whoop. A little too much on the collective there. And we're down. Oh, tail wheel's unlocked. Wanted to lock that before we landed, but is what it is, and we are down. So with that, why don't we go ahead and come around the pattern a little bit. Go ahead and do a hard reset on our trim here. Gonna need some right stick because we have some crosswind from the right. I'm gonna see the helicopter just weather vanes whoop, right into the wind. Kind of interesting. Get a little bit of oscillation there. Want to avoid that. And sometimes I swear I'm super smooth with these takeoffs, and other times it's just like a total shit show. And I don't know what I'm doing that is changing that around so much. Alright. Well, we got our tail wheel locked this time, so that's going to be very helpful. We'll just kind of follow little bit of a pattern this time, and for giggles, why don't we land right at that runway taxiway intersection there, in more or less the middle of the runway. That'll work for us. What is that? Some kind of jet blast deflector? Huh. Nice and smooth, nice and gentle on everything. Going a little fast, so let's start to slow her on down. Alright, this will be our second bounce. We'll just get in a third to get our currency in. After this guy. I'm having a hard time keeping my speed under control. This will be a smaller target for our landing this time. I've come past it a bit. Helicopter is really not liking this wind. We'll start to descend a bit. We got some power lines and some looks like some roadway lights there to be aware of on our approach in here. Alright, I don't think there's a light standard there. Should be good. Pointing more or less right into the wind. Got a little side slip going. We'll try to cancel that out. And we'll bop the nose down to get forward a bit. Come on, girly. Let's go. Get us to the runway. Tail wheel's locked this time, so we shouldn't be going for nearly as much of a ride once we touch down, which will be nice. "30 feet above the ground, looking good." I was trying to cancel out that side slip from the left. Probably that crosswind. Nice. Come on, 9 feet to go. Come on, girl, you can do it. There we go. Oh, that's a good helicopter. That's a good girl. Alright, good helicopter. Okay, we'll cancel out our trim, because it's probably all kinds of crazy for our takeoff here. And we're right here, basically more or less in the taxiway that we wanted to land on. More or less right in the middle. I'm pretty happy with that. So let's try this again. And we will go around and get in our third bounce of the day. And that should do us. So I'm just going to hold the brakes for this takeoff, because that seems to be helpful. Yeah, holding the brakes, especially on a windy takeoff, I don't know if that's procedurally sound for real helicopters or the real Apache, but that definitely helps. I mean, why wouldn't it be sound? Helicopters have skids. That's basically a like having your brakes on all the time, so that's definitely very helpful. So see, we're getting better. That's why we want to make sure that we get nice and current before we try and fly the big ol' Apache in a Sunday mission, that's for sure. So let's time in the pattern. Let's stay a little bit lower. Fly more of a helicopter pattern. Everything trimmed out. Everything's looking good. There we go. This is what I want. I keep going for the wrong version of my IHAD symbology. So I was looking for my dang... There we go. My dang velocity vector the whole time. Because the velocity vector in the Apache is very accurate. And it really, really helps with touching down in the right spot. And like everything else, it's keep saying this over and over and over again, but it really is the holy grail of Apache flying in DCS. Is just, you gotta be okay with being slow, you gotta be okay with being gentle and smooth on the controls. And why don't we go ahead and set her down right in there on that large apron area next to our two light stands there. So we'll have to be careful of the light stands, of course, especially with our rotor disc and how large that can be. Let's keep everything nice and aerodynamically centered as we make that quick little turn there. We'll start to cancel out that left to right side slip, nice and gentle on the collective. What I find to be what really gets me in trouble with landing the Apache and any helicopter in DCS really is when you panic and you yank up on the collective. It's gonna bring you up, yes, but you can overspeed the engine and then get into a low RPM state with the rotor blades and then find yourself coming crashing on down back to Earth, as well as you of course have all that really quick input of torque in, and thus you're going to find yourself having to correct with your rudder pedals really quickly, and your rudder pedals may get saturated in a flight sim using flight sim rudder pedals, and so you'd have to hit the trim, center the pedals, and then go back, which then usually leads to a POI. So it's just better to have a plan of how you're going to use your collective and not let yourself get outside of that plan. Okay. So even that, you know, I pulled up on the collective there, not necessarily in a jerky fashion, but in a nice smooth way, and it's still, I felt the helicopter lurch and pull itself to the right-hand side there. Okay, so gotta remember, Spud, that our helicopter has a giant old tail behind it, and so we're not actually centered on where we want to land, which is no good. So we're just going to gently bring us a little bit forward. So this is where, it's this last couple feet is where I tend to panic and have issues and get into those really bad POIs where I rip up on the collective and then kaboom, you hit the ground because you just can't correct quickly enough for that torque. And so that's where you just got to be real smooth, real careful. And we made it. We're on the ground. Let's turn on that parking brake. Beautiful. Alrighty guys, well that was fun. I wish I could have used the gun a bit more, but again, like I said earlier, you're like flying this like glass butterfly, super delicate thing, and then you get too close to something and it lights you up with 50 cal, and all of a sudden you're plummeting to the earth, and so you just can't get close enough in order to actually get a good solution with your gun. And so we didn't want that to happen today. I wanted to be able to come back and do a little bit of pattern work with you guys. So we'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you enjoyed it, and you guys can do all the YouTube bullshit down below, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you in the next one.